Bryant Park wind cuts as an oxygen hiss falters. My MTA badge warm in his dying hand. Is he giving me a goodbye or a beginning? The morning air over Midtown was thick with drizzle and bus exhaust. I was 7, clutching a paper bag of muffins from the corner deli when I saw him again. The thin man on the park bench near the fountain, his oxygen tank hissing beside him. The pigeons barely moved around his shoes. I hesitated. Grandpa always told me not to talk to strangers, but this man wasn't scary. He looked lonely. His eyes tracked the gray sky like he was waiting for something that never came. I stepped closer, the badge in my pocket pressing against my palm, the little MTA pin I'd found last summer on a subway platform. "Hey, mister," I said, voice barely louder than the hiss of his tank. "You dropped something?" He turned, startled. The lines on his face softened when he saw I was just a kid. "No, son." "I don't think I did." His voice rasped through the mask. I held up the badge. "Anyway, you can have it." "For luck," he chuckled once, then coughed. "That's kind of you. But you should keep it." I shook my head. "It's a subway badge. My mom used to say the subway connects everyone, even people who get lost." Something in his eyes flickered. He reached out, trembling, and closed his hand over mine. "Then I'll keep it," he said, "to remember this morning." I didn't know it then, but that moment, just a boy, a badge, and a man breathing borrowed air, would change everything. From the next bench, Grandpa cleared his throat. "Ethan, come on. You'll miss the train I ran to him." He glanced back once at the man. "That fellow's out here every day." Bent like the wind might carry him off. "Do you think he's okay?" Grandpa didn't answer. He just tightened his coat and steered me toward the subway entrance. 2 days later, the drizzle turned to cold rain. When we passed Bryant Park again, the bench was empty. A newspaper flapped against the trash can, headline, "Half-washed. Media fund founder in critical condition." There was a photo. Him, in better days, shaking hands at some gala. Charles Benton. Grandpa frowned. "Benton Media Group. Used to run half the ad world." I stared at the picture, heart pounding. "He's the guy from the bench." Grandpa nodded slowly, but his jaw tightened. "Come on, Ethan. We should get you home." He didn't see me slip my hand into my pocket. The badge was gone. The man still had it. That night, I dreamed of the hiss of his oxygen and the soft thank you in his eyes. By morning, Grandpa's phone rang. A woman's voice asked for him by name. Miss Lacey, from St. Vincent's Hospital. "You were listed as an emergency contact," she said. "Mr. Benton requested you and your grandson." Grandpa's hand froze midair. "That's impossible. I haven't heard that name in 20 years. He hung up, pale as paper. "What's wrong, Grandpa?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me like he was seeing someone else through me. "Your mother," he murmured. "She worked for a charity Benton once funded. Before you were born, rain beat harder on the window, and the subway below rumbled like a restless heart." "Get your coat," Grandpa said finally. "We're going to the hospital." Room 412 smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked wool. Charles Benton lay propped against white pillows, his skin thin as paper. But when he saw me, he smiled faintly. "You came," he whispered. I nodded, unsure why my chest ached. He motioned weakly to the bedside table. The MTA badge glinted there under the fluorescent light. "I kept it," he said. "A reminder that some things still move forward, even when everything else stops." The oxygen hissed again. Outside, a train thundered under the city streets, and for the first time I wondered what my mother's past had to do with this man's last days. Grandpa stood stiff near the hospital window, his hat in his hands. The Manhattan skyline was a pale smear beyond the glass, fog crawling over the rooftops. I sat in a vinyl chair beside Mr. Benton's bed, tracing the edge of the MTA badge where it rested on the side table. "Your mother," Mr. Benton began softly, "used to bring me coffee at meetings. Always 2 sugars, no cream. She said sweetness could balance anything bitter." His lips trembled. She worked at that nonprofit for media ethics, Global Voices. She believed stories could save people. Grandpa's knuckles whitened around the hat brim. You funded that charity, he said. Then you disappeared. I was sick even then, Benton murmured. But she didn't know how sick. He looked at me. What's your name, son? Ethan. He closed his eyes. Ethan. He said it like he'd been carrying that word in his chest for years. Later in the hallway, a doctor pulled Grandpa aside. Mr. Benton's condition is terminal. His lungs are failing. Maybe a few days at most. Grandpa nodded, his jaw tight. He asked to see my grandson. Any reason? The doctor hesitated. He said something about unfinished. Business, a chore. When Grandpa came back, his face was unreadable. We'll visit again tomorrow. I wanted to ask what that meant, but the look in his eyes stopped me. The next afternoon, the hospital's attorney, Ms. Claire Novak, was waiting in the room with a leather folder. She shook Grandpa's hand. Mr. Benton asked me to review an amendment to his estate plan. I watched as she slid out a document with trembling hands. It's a directive establishing a charitable trust, $5 million for community journalism. But there's a personal condition attached. She looked at me then. Grandpa frowned. Condition? That he meet with the boy one last time and say goodbye properly. Grandpa blinked. Why the boy? Ms. Novak's gaze softened. He said the child reminded him of someone he once loved and lost. I glanced at Benton. He was watching me quietly, eyes wet, like he wanted to tell me more, but couldn't yet. After the lawyer left, I climbed onto the chair beside his bed. Are you scared? I asked. He smiled faintly. No, just tired. But seeing you, it makes the city feel alive again. He pointed to the badge on the table. You gave me something precious, Ethan. That little token. It used to mean work, trains, deadlines. Now it means connection. You reminded me what that feels like. I didn't fully understand, but I nodded. He coughed, a deep rattle that made the monitors twitch. Grandpa stepped forward, concern creasing his brow, but Benton lifted a shaky hand. Don't worry. I just want to finish something. He turned his gaze to Grandpa. George, I failed her. I should have been there when the baby was born. Tell me she had a son? Grandpa froze. His voice came low, hoarse. Yes, a boy. She named him Ethan. Benton's breath caught. For a moment, the hiss of oxygen was the only sound. Then tears welled and rolled down the side of his face. I didn't know, he whispered. God forgive me. I didn't know. That night, Grandpa and I rode the subway home in silence. The badge lay heavy in my pocket again. Grandpa, I said finally, was he? He didn't look at me. Some truths, Ethan, need a little time before they're ready. But I saw the wet shine in his eyes, and I knew something enormous had shifted. The train roared through the tunnel. I held the badge tight, wondering why a small piece of metal suddenly felt like a heartbeat. At dawn, Grandpa got a call. Mr. Benton had taken a turn for the worse. We rushed back to the hospital. The nurse met us in the corridor, eyes kind but resigned. He's been waiting for you. Inside, Benton's breathing was shallow, his lips gray. He looked at me and smiled faintly. Hey, kid, you made it. I nodded, choking on air. He gestured toward his bedside drawer. There's an envelope in there. It's for you when you're older, 18. Promise me you'll open it then. I promise, I said. He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering, The trains never stop, Ethan. They just changed tracks. The oxygen hissed one last time. The monitor went flat, and I realized the man who'd held my badge had been holding much more. The funeral was quiet, too quiet for a man whose name had once been on half the billboards in Times Square. Only a handful of people came, old colleagues in gray coats, a nurse from the palliative ward, and us. The sky over Manhattan was low and heavy, swallowing sound. I stood beside Grandpa near the casket, the MTA badge clutched in my hand. I didn't cry, though my throat burned. Grandpa's eyes stayed on the priest's lips, unreadable. When it was over, the lawyer, Ms. Novak, approached us, her umbrella dripping rain onto her folder. Mr. Benton's estate requested a private meeting. Tomorrow morning. Midtown office. Grandpa nodded slowly. We'll be there. She looked down at me, hesitating. Ethan, you should hear what he left behind. The next day, Benton and Rowe's conference room looked more like a museum than an office. Mahogany table, brass lamps, framed front pages from newspapers Benton had once saved from bankruptcy. Ms. Novak handed Grandpa a sealed document and turned to me. Charles Benton drafted this during his last night at the hospital. It's not a full will. It's an intent letter. It outlines his wishes for a media trust, a donation to the city, and, she paused, a personal trust for you, Ethan. I blinked. Me? She nodded. $5 million placed in a charitable education fund, on the condition that you visit his apartment one last time. He said you'd understand once you saw it. Grandpa's voice was steady but cold. He was a generous man. But I don't want my grandson paraded around a penthouse like some symbol. Ms. Novak folded her hands. Mr. Benton was lucid when he signed. He wanted closure. For all of you. I looked up at Grandpa. Maybe we should go. He kept my badge. Maybe there's something else he wanted to give back. Grandpa hesitated, then exhaled slowly. All right, Ethan. Just once, the next afternoon, we stood before a marble tower on Central Park West. The doorman recognized Ms. Novak and waved us through. Inside, the elevator whispered to the top floor, opening into a space that felt both vast and lonely. The penthouse was flooded with pale light. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with photo albums and awards. The oxygen tank still sat near a window overlooking the park. Next to it, a small framed photograph. It was my mother, younger, laughing, holding a cup of coffee. Grandpa froze. His hand trembled as he lifted the frame. Where did he get this? Ms. Novak motioned to a folder on the table. He prepared a letter for both of you. And something else. Inside the folder were 2 envelopes, one addressed to George Harper, the other to Ethan. Grandpa opened his first. His lips moved silently as he read. Then he handed it to me. Go on, son. I unfolded mine carefully. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have time to say what I should have said years ago. I met your mother when she was fighting to make truth matter again. I failed her. Not by betrayal, but by absence. When she fell ill, I didn't come. I told myself it was mercy. It was cowardice. You gave me back a piece of the world I thought I'd lost forever. That badge you handed me, it reminded me that even underground, even surrounded by noise and steel, connection still exists. Don't let anyone tell you kindness is small. It is legacy. Forgive me if you can. And know that the trains we ride, no matter how dark the tunnel, always lead back to light. Charles. When I looked up, Grandpa's eyes were wet. Your mother told me once she forgave him, he whispered, but I never believed it until now. I traced the embossed MTA logo on my badge. He said trains lead back to light. Grandpa nodded, his voice breaking. Then maybe it's time we followed that track. We didn't notice the camera flash from the hallway, the man in the gray suit watching from the elevator. By nightfall, the tabloids had their headline, Media Mogul Leaves, Fortune to Unknown Child, and the battle for truth was about to begin. The first knock came just after dawn. Sharp, impatient. Grandpa was already at the table, spooning oatmeal into 2 bowls, when the sound froze him mid-motion. When he opened the door, 2 men in charcoal suits stood there. One introduced himself as Mr. Pierce, counsel for Benton's nephew, Daniel Rowe. The other held a folder thick with papers. I'm afraid we need to discuss the late Mr. Benton's mental capacity at the time of his final amendment, Pierce said, his tone clipped. Our client believes the directive was coerced. Grandpa's voice hardened. You think a dying man was tricked into charity? Pierce shrugged. We think he was confused. The trust names your grandson, a minor with no familial link. That's irregular. My stomach turned. Grandpa's jaw flexed. You'll have to prove it in court. Oh, we intend to. Pierce handed him a subpoena. Manhattan's Surrogates Court next Thursday. As they left, Grandpa slammed the door. The oatmeal had gone cold. The following days blurred into whispers and news alerts. Every channel replayed the same line. Benton's last-minute heir raises questions. At school, kids stared. One teacher asked if I was that Ethan. I didn't answer. Grandpa tried to shield me, but every envelope that arrived carried another notice. Freezes, petitions, demands for proof. Proof of what? That I mattered to him? Late one night, Grandpa pulled a small lockbox from his closet. There's something your mother left with me. Inside were old photographs, her graduation, a few charity events, and a hospital wristband dated 7 years before. The name field read, Baby Boy, Harper. Grandpa sighed. She told me not to open the rest unless someone questioned who you were. He opened the second envelope, labeled 18. Inside, still sealed in plastic, was a folded birth record, a DNA consent form, and a single photo of Charles Benton holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. My throat tightened. That's me. He nodded. I think so. But why would he hide it? Grandpa looked out the window toward the hum of the subway below. Maybe he didn't know you existed. Maybe your mother wanted peace, not scandal. I touched the photo again. Benton's hand was on my tiny shoulder, the same hand that had clutched my badge weeks ago. At the courthouse, the air smelled of rain and marble polish. Reporters swarmed the steps. Ms. Novak met us inside, her expression firm. Daniel Rowe's petition claims undue influence, she said. He's asking the court to void the trust. The judge entered. Honorable Margaret Coleman, silver hair tied tight. Let's proceed. Pierce rose, voice oiled and confident. Your Honor, my client believes Mr. Benton's mind was compromised by illness and manipulation. A 7-year-old stranger does not become heir overnight. Ms. Novak stood calmly. Mr. Benton's medical records confirm full cognition. His final directive was notarized, witnessed, and, Pierce cut in, a directive drafted after this boy appeared in his hospital room. Murmurs rippled through the room. I felt Grandpa's hand on my shoulder. Keep your head up, he whispered. Then Ms. Novak surprised everyone. We intend to submit evidence that Mr. Benton was, in fact, related to the minor beneficiary. Judge Coleman looked up sharply. Related? Yes, Your Honor. The courtroom fell silent. Pierce scoffed. That's absurd. Prove it. Ms. Novak turned to Grandpa. Mr. Harper, would you please open Exhibit A? Grandpa handed over the hospital documents, the photo, the wristband, the signed DNA consent form. Ms. Novak explained each piece methodically, voice steady as a train on track. These were found among the personal effects of Mr. Benton's former partner, the child's mother. A recent genetic test confirms biological paternity, Pierce sputtered. That can't be authenticated. Already verified by a court-approved laboratory, Ms. Novak said. Judge Coleman leaned forward. Then the trust stands. The court will not reward greed disguised as grief. The gavel struck once. And just like that, silence. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but Grandpa shielded me with his coat as we hurried down the marble steps. You okay, kid? He murmured. I nodded. He really was my dad. Grandpa's face softened. He was more than that, Ethan. He gave you a legacy. Now you decide what to do with it. I reached into my pocket and felt the MTA badge again. Warm from my hand, the metal edges smooth from wear. Somewhere below us, a train roared through the dark, and I knew which track I had to take next. 2 weeks after the ruling, the storm finally broke over the city. Rain swept down the windows of our small apartment, blurring the skyline into watercolor of gray. Grandpa sat by the kitchen table, sifting through the piles of mail. Most of it from people we didn't know. Letters from journalists, offers from financial advisors, even a distant cousin, of Benton's claiming shared legacy. He tossed them all aside. "We're not touching a cent until the court finalizes the distribution," he said. I was at the window, watching the city breathe steam through the streets below us. "It doesn't feel like anything changed," I murmured. Grandpa smiled faintly. "That's the best part, Ethan. You don't let money change you." But later that night, when I couldn't sleep, I took out the envelope from Benton's bedside drawer, the one he'd said to open at 18. I hadn't told Grandpa I'd found a second one tucked under the first. Inside was a photograph, the same bench at Bryant Park, decades earlier. My mom was sitting beside Benton, laughing, a cup of coffee between them. On the back, in Benton's handwriting, "For when he wonders where he came from." I traced the ink with my finger until the letters blurred. The next morning, Miss Novak met us at the old Benton Foundation office. The air smelled of dust and paper. She handed Grandpa a thick folder, marked Final Certification, Manhattan Surrogates Court. "It's official," she said. "The trust is active. The $5 million education fund is in Ethan's name, with oversight from your guardianship until he turns 21. Benton's apartment remains under the foundation as a public learning center." Grandpa looked overwhelmed. He really meant it. "He did," Novak said gently. "And he also left something you might want to see." She led us into what had once been Benton's private study. On the wall hung a photograph of the subway system, each line printed like veins across the city map. Beneath it, a plaque read, "For those who believe connection is legacy." In the corner sat a small display case containing one object, my MTA badge, mounted under glass. I stepped closer, heart hammering. The brass gleamed softly under the light. "He had it framed," I whispered. Ms. Novak nodded. "He called it his reminder. Said it was proof that one act of kindness can rewrite a life." Grandpa's voice caught. He wasn't wrong. Outside, the air carried the clean smell that only comes after rain. We walked along Fifth Avenue in silence until the hum of the subway echoed beneath the sidewalk. "Grandpa," I said quietly, "do you think Mom ever wanted him to find out?" He paused. "I think she wanted peace. And somehow, you gave both of them." That we descended the subway stairs together. The platform was alive with the rhythm of trains and tired commuters. A busker played a harmonica near the column, his case open for coins. I pulled out a folded dollar and dropped it in. He looked up, surprised. "Thanks, kid," I smiled. "Keep the music going." "It helps people remember." The man nodded, and the tune followed us into the train, low, aching, and beautiful. As the doors slid shut, I caught our reflection in the window. Grandpa's lined face beside mine, the city lights flickering across both of us. For a second, I thought I saw Benton's faint smile there too, in the glass between stops. Weeks passed. We went back to our routines: school, errands, walks through Bryant Park. The bench where I'd met Benton was empty again, but it never felt lonely. One afternoon, as leaves turned gold, I noticed a small card tucked into the bench slats. It bore the foundation seal and a handwritten note. "You reminded me what kindness sounds like. Keep listening. No signature, just the echo of a promise." I looked up at the skyline and smiled. "I will." That winter, Grandpa and I began something small. Every Friday, we brewed hot cocoa in thermoses and rode the subway from station to station. We handed cups to anyone cold or alone: workers, veterans, mothers with kids. We called it the Subway Kindness Tour. People laughed at the name, but it stuck. And somewhere in that endless tunnel of trains and faces, I found my answer. Not in inheritance or blood, but in the simple sound of thank yous whispered over steaming cups. The badge stayed on my backpack, gleaming under fluorescent light each time. The doors opened. It wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a track that led home. By late January, the Subway Kindness Tour had turned into something more than a Friday ritual. News stations began to notice. A local reporter filmed Grandpa and me at the 42nd Street platform, handing out cocoa with a sign that read, "Stay warm, stay kind." Within a week, volunteers showed up carrying their own thermoses. At first, I thought Grandpa would hate the attention, but he just smiled and said, "If this keeps one more person from feeling invisible, I'll handle the cameras." The city felt different, colder, but somehow warmer. The badge on my backpack clinked softly as I walked, a reminder of everything that had brought us here. One evening, a familiar voice reached me from the crowd near Bryant Park station. "You're Ethan, right?" I turned to see Miss Novak, holding a paper bag and looking tired but kind. "I was hoping I'd find you here." She handed me the bag. Inside was a small metal tin and a letter sealed with Benton's initials. He asked that this be given to you once the Foundation's memorial was approved. "It's ready now. The reading table in the New York Public Library has been dedicated in your mother's name." I held the tin carefully. "What's inside?" She smiled faintly. Something that belonged to him. When she left, I sat on the bench, the same bench, and opened it. Inside was a subway token, old and worn, engraved with a single line of text around the rim. "Keep the trains running." For a moment, the noise of the city faded. I could almost hear Benton's voice again. "The trains never stop. They just change tracks." The next morning, Grandpa and I went to the library. The marble steps gleamed under the thin winter sun, and when we entered, a small brass plaque caught the light near the reading tables. In memory of Lillian Harper, she believed truth could heal. I traced the engraving with my finger. "She'd have liked this," Grandpa said softly. I nodded. "She always wanted people to read without fear. Maybe this is her way of still teaching." He smiled. "She'd be proud of you, Ethan." Of both of them, actually. We sat in silence, the soft shuffle of pages around us like breathing. When we left, I clipped the subway token beside the badge on my backpack. 2 pieces of metal, one from a boy who offered kindness, one from a man who found redemption. Both shining, both connected. But the peace didn't last long. A letter arrived that evening, hand-delivered, Rowe and Associates embossed across the envelope. Grandpa frowned as he opened it. Inside was a single line typed in cold black ink. "Greater than further inquiry into Benton's estate is underway. Additional claimants identified." He looked at me. "They're not done." I felt the heat rise in my chest. "But the court already ruled." "Money makes people stubborn, Ethan," he said quietly. "But we'll handle it." He didn't sound convinced. That night, I lay awake, listening to the subway hum under the streets. Every sound felt like a heartbeat from below, steady, unstoppable. I remembered Benton's last words. I remembered Mom's smile in that old photo. And I decided something right then. If they were going to drag his name through another fight, I wouldn't stay quiet. I'd make sure the world remembered who Charles Benton really was. Not a headline, not a dollar sign, but a man who learned kindness too late and tried to pass it on. 2 days later, I stood before a small crowd at the library dedication. Cameras clicked, people whispered, but I kept my voice steady. "My name's Ethan Harper," I said. "Some of you know the stories about Mr. Benton. I knew the man on a park bench who carried an oxygen tank and listened when no one else did. He taught me something simple. That connection is legacy. And that kindness doesn't need proof to be real." I lifted the badge from my bag and held it up. He gave this back to me once, but I think it belongs to all of us now. The room went quiet. Then, one by one, people began to clap. I didn't look at the reporters. I looked at Grandpa, who was wiping his eyes. He nodded. "Let's get back to work, kid," he said. "We've got cocoa to make." That night, under the steel lights of the subway tunnels, we poured steaming cups for strangers again. A woman in a red coat took one and smiled through her exhaustion. "You two are the reason I didn't quit my job last week," she said. "Someone told me about the kindness tour." Her voice cracked. "Thank you." Grandpa just said, "Pass it on." As she disappeared into the crowd, I slipped the subway token between my fingers. The metal was warm now, alive. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the trains weren't the only thing still running. The winter deepened. Snow fell thick over the city, muting sirens, softening edges. Under the frozen grid of Manhattan, our subway kindness tour rolled on. Thermos by thermos, station by station. Word spread faster than we could keep up. College kids, nurses, even off-duty cops started showing up at stops with cups and cookies. Someone built a website overnight. Grandpa tried to pretend he hated the fuss. "All this for Coco," he muttered. But I caught the pride flickering in his eyes each time a stranger called him Mr. Harper from the news. Then one afternoon, just as the city thawed to a slush of gray puddles, Ms. Novak called again. Her tone was cautious. "Ethan, I thought you should know. Daniel Rowe's appeal isn't about the trust this time. He's contesting Benton's reputation, claims the foundation misused funds before Benton's death." Grandpa's jaw tightened. "They're dragging him again?" "Yes, there's a hearing scheduled. I'll handle it. But they might subpoena you as a witness." I felt my stomach drop. "Me?" "He left the trust to you, Ethan. They'll try to paint it as manipulation. I'm sorry, the courthouse again. The same marble hallways, same sterile chill." I sat beside Grandpa, clutching my backpack. Rowe's attorney started smooth as silk. "Your Honor, we simply want transparency. Mr. Benton's state of mind was under question, and now we learn funds were rechanneled through unregistered accounts." Ms. Novak rose calmly. "The Foundation's books are clean. Every dollar is traceable." She glanced at me, then at the judge. "But if we're talking about intent, there's something the court hasn't seen." She approached the bench and held up a USB drive. "Mr. Benton recorded a message the night before he passed. We submit this as Exhibit F." The judge nodded. "Play it." The lights dimmed, the speakers crackled, and there he was. Benton, frail but steady. Greater than, "If anyone questions what I'm doing, let them." My wealth built walls. This gift breaks one. The boy who gave me a badge reminded me what truth feels like. Small, unprofitable, but alive. If that truth survives me, that's enough. The recording ended. No one spoke for a long moment. The judge exhaled. "Motion dismissed. The record will show that Charles Benton acted with full awareness. Grandpa's hand found mine under the table." "He got the last word," he whispered. Outside, cameras flared again. I ducked my head, but one reporter leaned forward. "Ethan, do you think you deserved it?" I stopped. For once, I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "But he thought I did. And maybe that's what grace is. Someone believing in you before you do." The reporter lowered her mic, surprised. Grandpa chuckled quietly as we walked off. "You talk like your mother." "Is that a bad thing?" He smiled. "It's the best thing." That night, back at the apartment, we lit a single candle on the windowsill, the same way Mom used to when the city lost power. Snow drifted past the glass like quiet ash. "Grandpa," I said, "what if the trust isn't the end? What if we built something bigger, something that keeps going even when we can't?" He looked up from his mug. "What are you thinking?" "A program for kids like me, public school students who want to tell stories, real stories." Benton said connection was legacy. We could teach them that. He stared for a long moment, then nodded. "You've got his stubborn streak. Let's do it." By spring, the Benton Harper Fellowship for Youth, journalism was born. We launched it at the same library where Mom's plaque gleamed under the skylight. The first batch of students showed up in thrift store coats, wide-eyed and nervous. One of them, a shy girl named Zoe, handed me a drawing before class. A subway train bursting from a tunnel into sunlight. On the side, she'd scrawled, "Truth rides the rails." I pinned it above my desk. That night, after the last student left, Grandpa and I stood on the library steps, watching the city's lights come on one by one. "You did good, kid," he said quietly. I looked at the token and badge on my backpack, both catching the glow of a passing cab. "We did good," I corrected. Somewhere deep beneath us, a train roared. A low, Eternal pulse. I smiled. Sounds like him. Grandpa's eyes softened. Yeah, and I think he'd like where it's headed. The city wind picked up, scattering a few snowflakes that hadn't melted yet. Tiny sparks against the dark. By the time the snow finally melted off the rooftops, our fellowship had found its rhythm. Every Saturday, a dozen students filled the library room with notebooks and coffee cups. The sound of their laughter bounced off the marble pillars. They wrote about janitors, bus drivers, street musicians, the quiet heroes no one bothered to see. Grandpa called them Benton's new reporters. I liked that. It felt like the city itself was breathing again through their words. But one morning, Miss Novak appeared in the doorway, rain dripping from her coat. Her expression told me something was wrong before she spoke. "Ethan," she said gently, "the Foundation's office was broken into last night. Nothing stolen, just files scattered. But a hard drive containing Benton's personal correspondence is missing." Grandpa frowned. "That drive had his letters, didn't it?" "His private ones?" "Yes, including one addressed to you," she said to me. "We had planned to archive it next month." My chest tightened. "You think Roe did it?" She sighed. "We don't know, but it's not over yet." That night, the city felt heavy again. Rain tapped on the windows as I sat on the floor beside my backpack. The badge and token gleamed under the desk lamp. I picked them up, feeling their familiar weight. "What would you do, Mom?" I whispered. I opened my laptop and began drafting a statement for the fellowship's website. No spin, no self-pity, just truth. To whoever took the files, you can steal papers, but you can't erase what they meant. The Benton Foundation isn't about inheritance. It's about connection. You can't rob someone of that. I hit publish before I could overthink. Within hours, the post spread across social media. Hundreds of comments flooded in. Volunteers offering help, former employees defending Benton's name, even journalists pledging transparency. Grandpa read the comments aloud, shaking his head. "Kid, you've started something you can't stop." "Good," I said. Neither could he. A week later, detectives recovered the stolen drive in a pawn shop on Canal Street. It hadn't been accessed. Ms. Novak brought it to us herself. "There's something on here you should see," she said, plugging it into her laptop. A single video file appeared, dated the day before Benton's last hospital admission. He sat in his office, frail but sharp-eyed, looking straight at the camera. "Ethan, if this ever reaches you, I want you to know something. I didn't leave you wealth to carry my name. I left it because you reminded me how to live. The badge you gave me, it wasn't charity. It was mercy. You gave me one honest moment in a life full of transactions. Promise me you'll keep doing that. Promise me you'll stay kind when the world rewards cruelty." He paused, coughing softly. "Greater than, and tell your grandfather I remember him too. Tell him I never stopped looking for Lillian after she left that summer. I hope he forgives me." The video ended. Grandpa's hand trembled as he closed the laptop. His voice broke when he said, "I already did, Charlie." That night, we walked through Bryant Park again. The bench where I'd first seen Benton was slick with rain. The city lights shimmered on puddles like fragments of glass. Grandpa pulled something from his pocket, Benton's old fountain pen, the one Ms. Novak had given him after the court case. "Your mother used to write her grant proposals with this pen," he said. "Maybe it should keep moving too." He handed it to me. "You'll know when to use it." I held it tight, feeling its cold weight warm in my hand. Another piece of him. Another connection crossing time. 2 months later, the fellowship published its first anthology, Stories from Every Borough, bound in simple blue covers. The dedication read, "For those who believe truth rides the rails." At the release event, Ms. Novak spoke first, then Grandpa. When it was my turn, I didn't bring notes. "I once gave a man a badge," I began. "He gave me something I still can't explain back. Maybe it was belief, maybe it was forgiveness. Either way, it keeps me moving." I looked out at the rows of young faces. "The world runs on connection. If you lose it, find it again. That's the only story worth telling. The applause rose slowly, soft but steady, like the rhythm of a train leaving the station. When I glanced toward the back, I could have sworn I saw Benton there for an instant, leaning against the doorframe, smiling that quiet, grateful smile. And just before he faded, I thought I heard his voice again. Keep the trains running. Spring came early that year. The city shed its gray like an old coat, and Bryant Park bloomed again. Fresh grass, tulips pushing through soil dark from rain. For the first time since everything began, the air didn't feel heavy. Our fellowship had become more than an idea. It was motion. Every weekend, the students boarded trains to boroughs they'd never visited, interviewing bus drivers, janitors, night shift nurses, people whose stories stitched the city together. Their pieces appeared in community papers, then national outlets. One afternoon, I watched Zoe, our youngest fellow, stand by the subway turnstile with her recorder, talking to an MTA conductor about his 25 years underground. Her laughter carried down the tunnel. Grandpa leaned on his cane beside me. "That sound," he said. "That's legacy." I nodded. "It's him again, still running through the lines." He smiled, proud and tired. "And through you." That night, we visited the library to restock supplies for the next class. The marble floors echoed under our steps. The room where my mother's plaque hung was quiet, save for the rustle of pages and the steady hum of the lights. I stopped in front of her name again. Lillian Harper. She believed truth could heal. Next to it, a new plaque had been mounted since the anthology launch. Charles Benton. He believed kindness could endure. Between them, a single brass rail stretched across the wall, connecting the two plaques like a piece of track. I touched the metal, felt the faint warmth where visitors' hands had done the same. "They finally meet," I whispered. Grandpa's voice softened. "Took them long enough." That weekend, Ms. Novak hosted the fellowship's first press reception in Benton's old penthouse. The oxygen tank was gone now, replaced by shelves of the students' published stories. The city glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows like a sea of lights. When I stood to speak, I noticed a familiar face near the back, a gray-haired man in a neat coat, Daniel Rowe. He approached me afterward, hesitant. "You've done good work, kid." Better than I expected, I didn't shake his hand at first. But then I saw something weary in his eyes. Not arrogance, regret. He said quietly, "I lost my uncle long before he met you. I only saw the money. You saw the man." For a moment, the city's noise faded again. "It's not too late to see him," I said. "He's everywhere now, if you listen." He nodded once, eyes glinting, and walked away. Later that night, after the crowd had gone, I wandered to the window. The park below was dotted with lights, people laughing, taxis honking. The city was alive. Grandpa joined me with 2 cups of cocoa, steam curling into the cool air. "For tradition," he said. I grinned. "Can't break the tour." He raised his cup. "To them." "To them," I echoed. We stood in silence, sipping warmth, watching headlights weave through the streets like tiny trains. Then Grandpa reached into his coat and handed me a small envelope. "It came this morning," he said, "from the probate court." Last delivery from Benton's estate. Inside was a handwritten note on thick paper. The ink had faded a little. "Ethan, if this finds you, it means the city kept its promise. Use what you have not to change the world, but to remind it it's still worth changing. When you ride the train, think of us. Every arrival is just another chance to begin again. Greater than, CB." My throat tightened. He knew exactly what to say. Grandpa smiled. He always did. He just ran. Out of time, before the next morning, we took the subway downtown. Just another ride. Just another day. Commuters yawned, music leaked from earbuds, and the rails clattered steady beneath us. When the train surfaced between tunnels for a brief flash of daylight, I saw our reflection in the glass. Me, Grandpa, the badge, the token, and that old fountain pen clipped to my jacket. I realized then that everything was still connected: the past, the mistakes, the forgiveness. And as the train dove back into the dark, I whispered what had become our quiet prayer: "Keep the trains running." Grandpa nodded beside me, eyes closed, the faintest smile curving his lips. Always. Summer arrived, soft and golden. The city smelled of pretzels and asphalt, and the park that once held our first meeting now hosted the closing ceremony of the Benton Harper Fellowship. Dozens of students sat in folding chairs beneath string lights, their stories printed in blue-bound anthologies stacked neatly on a table. The subway rumbled faintly beneath our feet, like a pulse that never stopped. Grandpa stood by the podium, cane balanced in one hand. His voice, though roughened by years, carried warmth. "The best things we leave behind," he said, "aren't built of marble or steel. They're moments like this, when one small kindness turns into 1,000 others." He gestured for me to step up. I took a deep breath, the badge and token gleaming on my backpack, the fountain pen clipped to my shirt pocket. "I used to think legacy was something you had to earn," I began. "But now I know it's something you build every time you stop to listen." I looked at the rows of faces, our fellows, our volunteers, even a few city officials who'd helped expand the program. A boy gave away a subway badge once, a man gave it meaning, and this, I spread my arms toward the crowd, is what that meaning became. Applause filled the park, echoing off glass towers. For a moment, I thought I heard the faint hiss of oxygen, the rhythm of breathing that once tethered a stranger to this world. After the ceremony, Grandpa and I lingered by the bench. Fireflies blinked around the lampposts. The air was thick with the smell of grass and cocoa powder from the stand our volunteers had set up. He lowered himself onto the wood, sighing with contentment. "This spot's come a long way." "So have we," I said. He smiled. "Your mother would be proud." I traced the metal edge of the badge with my thumb. "I think he'd be proud too." Grandpa chuckled. "He'd probably complain about the cocoa being too sweet." We laughed quietly together, the kind of laughter that leaves a lump in your throat afterward. Then his tone softened. "You know, Ethan, I don't have many more winters left to chase trains. But you'll keep it going, right?" I nodded. "Always." A month later, the fellowship expanded into every borough. A city grant helped fund student reporting booths in subway stations, small corners with a desk, a microphone, and a sign that read, "Tell your story." I visited each one, riding the same line Benton used to take between Midtown and the Upper West Side. At every stop, people shared something: a memory, a regret, a laugh. Each recording was uploaded to a map of the city, glowing dots spreading across the digital grid like constellations underground. The project caught national attention. Newspapers called it the Heartline. But to me, it was just what he'd wanted: connection, moving endlessly forward. Late one evening, months later, I found myself back at Bryant Park again. The air was cool, leaves whispering overhead. I sat on the bench with a notebook, writing beneath the streetlight. A boy wandered over, maybe 6 or 7, clutching a plastic toy train. His mother called from a few feet away, but he lingered, curious. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Writing stories," I said. "About people. Good ones or sad ones?" "Both," I said with a smile. "They usually start sad but end better." He nodded solemnly. "That's how trains work. They go in tunnels, then come out again." The words hit something deep in my chest. I pressed the badge in my palm. "You're absolutely right." Before he ran back to his mother, he set his toy train beside me. "You can keep it," he said. I watched them disappear into the lights, the little train warm in my hand. When I finally stood to leave, I placed the badge on the bench beside Benton's memorial plaque, just for a moment. The metal caught the glow of the lamppost, a reflection of everything that had come full circle. The city hummed. The rails below sang faintly in the night. And I whispered to the empty bench, to the man who'd once sat there gasping for air and found grace instead. "You're still running, Charles. Every story, every cup of cocoa, every heartbeat under this city, You're still running. I clipped the badge back on my backpack, tucked the toy train beside it, and walked toward the station entrance. The rumble grew louder as I descended, warm wind, rushing up from the tunnel. Somewhere down there, a whistle sounded. A promise, not an ending. The doors slid open, light spilling across the platform, and I stepped aboard.